Let's talk about your global footprint and just dig into a bit of detail around that. As far as kind of supporting organisations globally, you mentioned recently, I think in the last 8 weeks or so, that you're now covering 11 languages in your with your services. Talk a little bit about how you support global accounts now, and also I'm really interested to know what your plan is as far as growth is concerned for the future. Is this something that you're looking to do through mergers and acquisition, or is this something that you think might be organic?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting actually. When we founded Tradeshift, we knew from day one that the world we were entering of supply chains would be increasingly global. You'll have more companies joining the global economy in China and India, in Africa, the next 20 years than you will have in the West combined. And I think we built Tradeshift to utilize that from the beginning, and that means we have a great translation layer in Tradeshift. We have a great sort of local compliance layer. So we have 11 languages already, but we actually have active users in 190 countries. And we have enterprise suppliers in more than 50 of those. So I mean, to put it simply, we want to be the best at global. And I think coming from Europe, we actually have a huge advantage over some of our competition who have a very North American perspective on the world. And a fun fact is we're growing faster in India and China today than any other network in the world. And I think, in fact, actually, India is now growing faster than Europe. So in a sense, you can say we were born with a global mission from day one, and not just because we think that's the right thing to do, but also because that's where our bias is. And we see that this becomes a differentiating factor in more and more deals. As for our mission, I think it really remains the same. We launched Tradeshift because we want to connect all the companies in the world, and that's a hugely ambitious mission, but it's also, I think, that kind of mission you need in this industry to really shake things up. I think for way too far we've been satisfied with having 5% of the suppliers in Europe connected, maybe less than 3% globally, and I think the real numbers should be close to 100%.
And what's your view? I mean, just coming back to either partnering or your grand plan as far as growth is concerned. I mean, you mentioned China and India, which are very interesting territories as far as their acceptance of electronic file as being a legal invoice is concerned. I'm curious to know, well, a couple of things. How have you found developing your e-invoicing service in those countries, especially China? So that's my first question. But also on top of that, how is maybe those countries and the development in those countries having an impact on your global footprint and the plans around growth for your global footprint?
Yeah, so I think there were several questions. So first, on mergers and acquisitions, I think the right way for Tradeshift to grow is not through M&A. It's not through mergers and acquisitions. I think we'll keep growing our network organically, and as long as we're growing it as fast as we are right now, we don't really need to use any other sources. I think if you look at those markets like India and China, who actually do have, as you're completely right, specific legislation. So for instance, in India, you need to have a paper copy of the invoice as well. They're still using Tradeshift because it gives them an electronic footprint. It gives them a much faster process. And I think one thing that's very important to understand is that Tradeshift is a platform. It's not just an e-invoicing network, and that means we have many use cases outside pure e-invoicing that people are using it for. So I think in one sense, people are taking a much more broad perspective when they're using Tradeshift than some of the typical e-invoicing network, which is a very narrow term. I think there's so many business processes that are touching the supply chain, of which e-invoicing is just one. And I think right now we are helping our customers solve that globally.